we're very much focused on identity and security. There's technologies called zero knowledge proofs that are increasingly important, and I think that they're going to probably change the identity landscape. So in digital assets, that's where we spend time. In infrastructure, there's so many different categories. I think everybody's focused on AI. We kind of focus on automation more broadly, and automation both for people and for machines. So there's a couple of different categories within that. Specifically, I'm focused on what tools will developers require. So we don't think the world's going to get developer replacement. We think it's going to get developer augmentation, and that's going to spur, an enormous productivity revolution in the ability to code and the ability to automate certain processes, and mostly in enterprises.
There is an investor, mostly in technology as well as real estate, lately in cryptocurrencies, consulting for as many years, for the last 30 years, coaching businesses for the last 15, and starting this platform allowed me to have a space to hear peers that are coming to us looking to raise money internally or externally. Internally, of course, getting more clients, getting more business. Externally, to be able to actually look for funding, look for investments in some different areas. So we've got this space that we call for investor sessions. Next Thursday, we'll have it for any venture capitalists. And we've also have on March 6th, on a Thursday, we'll have a space for strategic investors. So the opportunities to be able to delve a little deeper with a specific topic, able to collaborate in some fashion, to be able to work together in a world of CoVentures. And by that, I mean is to be able to tap into some of the resources that our members have, our peers have, which is talent and strategies, and of course, resources and connections, even funding as well. Last year, we focused a lot more on cybersecurity, creating a cybersecurity academy for training, focusing on vertical markets that needed cybersecurity, like healthcare. And also with some of our peers, like consulting agencies, able to provide government grants and commercial incentives if you qualify as a caveat. But certainly those could go into millions of dollars if it's the right person, right company that's looking for grants or even incentives. Entrepreneurs University, we have Bob Norton that created that for educating, training small and medium and large size companies, depending on what they are and what their direction is. Of course, there's different deliverables for them. We're also working with VenOps for compliance in a particular vertical of healthcare with about 1,000 hospitals, rural hospitals that they're involved with. And they created an AI that will help the medical institutions to go further, as well as some of our other peers like Echo.ai, Savvy.ai, that have AI tools to be able to address employee benefits and certainly assessments. And we're also working in a world of nonprofit in philanthropic areas like Continuum Foundation for virtual solutions in an environment for blockchain, as well as cryptocurrencies and NFTs. Ruba.world in the Southeast Asia, Blackbird Global Foundation focusing on healthcare with healthcare kiosks. They started off in cybersecurity and segued into working with governments to help them in some of the other areas, recycling. And the other opportunity, of course, is to have a CoVentures mastermind session that we have on a weekly basis, as well as our opportunity to be able to participate with strategic investors. And we do that the first Thursday of the month. I'll put this on the chat box for you to participate. It's for specific topics. And this first topic is going to be on leadership transformation, building teams for successful pivots. So that's my invitation. Join our community, join our events, consider joining our world of CoVentures, consider participating in a CoVentures mastermind, and certainly join us for our investors, strategic investor session. But first, big ideas, Paul.
Yeah, so I think there's categories for us. So like I said, I do infrastructure and then I do some digital asset infrastructure. I think in the digital asset side, we're mostly liquid trading, so it's not like we're trying to find the founders that are starting ventures that are, trying to solve a problem 5 years out. But I think in that space in particular, we're very much focused on identity and security. There's technologies called zero knowledge proofs that are increasingly important, and I think that they're going to probably change the identity landscape. So in digital assets, that's where we spend time. In infrastructure, there's so many different categories. I think everybody's focused on AI. We kind of focus on automation more broadly, um, and automation both for people and for machines. So there's a couple of different categories within that. Specifically, I'm focused on what tools will developers require. So we don't think the world's going to get developer replacement. We think it's going to get developer augmentation, and that's going to spur, an enormous productivity revolution in the ability to code and the ability to automate certain processes, and mostly in enterprises. There's a whole bunch of consumer stuff. I don't do it. That's not my thing. But we have partners that do it. There's lots of interesting technologies there. But I think the scale technologies are going to be focused in the enterprise space. And then a more of a newer area for me is kind of in the energy space. In Puerto Rico, there's all kinds of incentive structures here that you can take advantage of. And as a result, there's some businesses here focused principally on solar energy, space exploration, a couple of more deep tech but highly capital intensive industries that we can leverage lots of incentives for.
But what tools specifically are you using or thinking of obtaining for developers at this point, Paul?
So we have several companies that are creating these tools. So, again, I run multiple venture funds, and so our companies are focused in that area. Specifically, network infrastructure, like automating that process for large enterprises. It used to be that only telcos ran networks. Today, giant corporations are spending more on their networks than they are on lots of other things that they used to devote CapEx to. And it's not their bailiwick. It's not what they know. So they have to have specialized tools, and we have companies like Pliant and Selector and StreamMeet, a bunch of others that offer these tools to developers or to operators so that they can manage their network and infrastructure in a much more productive way.
I'd just like to hear more, Paul, about your fund's focus. You said you had multiple funds, so maybe you could just name the spaces that you have investment theses in.
Yeah, sure. So it's all early stage technology focused. It's not really life sciences. We do a little bit of synthetic bio, but not much. And we are, I'd say seed to Series A is generally where we invest. The moniker was post seed about 5, 10 years ago is where we started, but it's much broader. And then within the categories of investment, like I said, our fund is I represent the infrastructure side. So think software, data center. If it touches the analytics stack, it sort of falls to me. Databases, deep tech and optical technologies, interconnects, those kinds of things are what I spend my time on. And then we have guys that do much more generic software in the enterprise. So, traditional SaaS businesses. And like I said, some consumer businesses, again, not my space, but our guys do that in, pretty much every vertical. That is, we focus on automation more broadly. So, people think of AI as Chat GPT, right? It's AI has been around for a long time. It's infected lots of other sectors of the market. I mean, 15 years ago, we had developers that were being replaced in India because you could code it autonomically. Like, there's AI has been around for a long time. I think what is new is the data sets that are available to train AI has obviously increased exponentially. And so it's kind of, we're in that second half of the chessboard sort of experience of where AI can be applied. So I wouldn't say we're not focused on it. That is not what I was implying. What I was implying is that robotics and automation more broadly in the manufacturing space, coupled with what you'll call software tools or AI software tools, that opportunity I think is getting increasingly large. And it's getting increasingly large because there's big meta global things going on. Like we're resupplying, we're refactoring our supply chains. And those are 10, 20-year investments. And as you refactor those, it touches lots of industries, and it especially touches the manufacturing industry, industrial, lots of sectors that we traditionally had not focused on. So I guess that's what I'm really trying to imply.
Yeah, no, that makes
And then the
sense.
other space that I think is interesting where we have a thesis around is, we've coded on silicon for 50 years. We're going to code on DNA for 50 years. So I think that notion of programmability in life source is a very interesting area that, it's probably more for my kids than for me, given the duration, but I think it's a really, really topical space.
Let's hear from Bob Bourgelet. Bob is also an investor, and you also have a startup, Bob. I wonder if you could say more about what's your big idea going into this year? We're already into the year, but the balance of this year in your business, big idea, opportunity, or challenge. But first, what's the big idea, Bob?
So I think we're concentrating on the whole healthcare industry, but specifically trying to resolve some of the big problems, lack of medical staff, physicians, burnout, and all of these because the healthcare industry has not taken pace with all the other industries. Paul was just talking about, um, various industries using AI 15, 20 years ago to increase efficiency. The healthcare medical practice has constantly said no because all the doctors in the room were the smartest people. So, the whole concept is I have a business called All AI Health, and what we're trying to do is it's not only AI, we're using technologies of any type to improve outcomes, improve efficiencies, and just make the whole world of medical practitioners easier.
Is there a particular niche that you're approaching? Because when you're talking about all AI health, that seems pretty general to me. What exactly does it do, Bob?
Yeah, so the name of the company is basically an ally to the physician. So all AI has two meanings. We're an ally. So the first product that we've developed and that is being used by various clinics is a digital clinical interview, which enables a physician or any medical practitioner to get much more information on the patient prior to any discussion between the patient and the medical practitioner. So what does that do? If you look at some of the problems in the healthcare industry, is the whole economics. Physicians are wanting to make more money. Their problem is how many patients they can see. It's all the regulation about how much they have to do all sorts of documentation in the electronic health record, which most of them despise because it was pushed upon them. It wasn't made by them. So what we're doing is with this electronic, this digital clinical interview, we're basically almost voiding the need for them to do any medical documentation because we're using, we take all that information and basically write up the doctor's report before they see the patient, which we then take a recording of the exchange between the patient and the physician, add that information and make a complete doctor's note of what went on between that patient and the physician that they can upload to the electronic health record, saving them up to 50% of their time with each patient. We're starting off with specialty clinics. The largest spend in the US is on orthopedics or musculoskeletal issues, 600 billion. So we're into some of the larger orthopedic clinics where this is being seen as very useful. We've got many requests from urology clinics also, because that's another area where intensity and questions beforehand, and the more questions the physician or medical practitioner asks, better that patient will do as it goes through their patient experience. So yeah, so this is we're starting on a specialty by specialty basis with the aim of, I'm going to say, within 24 months being on for all physicians in everyday practices.
Just a comment. I feel your pain. So many of the things you just mentioned are some of the same things we're going through because we do a lot of work with physicians' practices, primarily in the ortho side as well. So love to chat with you later.
Hear from Bob Norton. Bob Norton's had 4 companies, currently has 2. He's raised a lot of revenue funding for his business. Currently does education and training for small, medium-sized companies. Bob, I wonder if you might share more about who you are and what you do, and the big idea that you're focusing this coming year. Opportunity, maybe challenge, but certainly the big idea. Bob Norton.
Yeah, our big idea is taking away the limiters that prevent 99.75% of companies literally from breaking the $10 million barrier. Um, Most of that is, the gear shifts that are necessary in management style and leadership and systemization and, focus on the culture, after the product has reached product market fit to be able to scale operations and marketing and expand into new channels or have a portfolio of niches strategy. So we go into companies that are 1 or 2 or maybe 10 or $20 million in revenue. And we up level the professionalism of the management team using more sophisticated management styles than most people know and that better than are taught in our MBA programs, which are about operating businesses, but not really about growing businesses. And it's pretty easy to run an existing business. It's harder, much harder to grow a business because you're either taking market share from competitors or you're innovating and creating, new revenue opportunities or sectors to expand the business into. So we have a 6 systems framework that are modular systems that drop in every 2 months. We would go through a cycle. And our goal is to make our clients the leader in that marketplace, given time to execute a superior strategy and cadence and discipline around management. If you're a fan of Jim Collins, author of Good to Great and some other fantastic books, he's famous for saying that the decision to grow is one of discipline. Looking at hundreds of companies and the structure and critical thinking combined with the creativity of innovation, both in product and in market, and as a cultural imperative. That's what really makes disruptive companies grow to 100 million in 5 years, or sort of a reasonable center point for companies that are investor worthy. Of course, they'll need some capital. As Rocky said, I've raised about 40 million for my own companies, returning $1 billion, so about a 25x return there, I guess, and helped raise about $1 billion for clients over the last 20 years. Not all venture capital, actually, across many, many different sources of funding, with corporate funding and venture debt and everything else that everyone might want to layer into a mosaic of financing over a 3 to 5 year growth spurt, going from single digit millions to 100 million or more. So that's really what we do. We haven't, I put a link in the chat box. We haven't introduced a new program for investor firms this year, which is looking at their portfolio and taking those 80% that might be struggling and not an easy exit, and helping them to pivot and improve strategy and execution.
What's the biggest challenges do you think businesses are facing at this point, Bob?
Well, Trump is causing chaos across the world for what I would say is his ego and attention, and he's creating a lot of uncertainty long term. No CEO is going to decide to build a factory based on a Trump executive order. It hasn't been passed by Congress and therefore could go away as fast as he could. And frankly, I doubt he'll make it to the end of the term, given his health issues and other things. But the unknowns are always scary to markets. So I think we had a 500-point drop in the market today, and I think he's steering us into a major recession. I've said here before that I think we've been in a recession since Q4 of 2022. And that's just been papered over by $6 trillion in extra COVID spending, which is just coming to the end of its dispersion into the economy now. And so I'm not optimistic. I think we're going to see a significant drop in the market this year, and we're going to be in a consumer recession. The indicators are there. And of course, even Warren Buffett has, for the first time in his life, 50% of his portfolio, I think, is in cash right now, which he is on the record saying he hates to do. So even Warren Buffett, who refuses to time markets and always want his money at work in equity, has now cashed out 50% of his holdings. And there are a lot of indicators like that says we're sliding into a recessionary period.
Like what I'm hearing there, Bob. I'm concerned about the overall U.S. economy, but the world economy, because uncertainty just stops everyone from doing anything. So
yeah, I mean, it was a factor last year before the election. Everyone kind of waiting to see what happened, right? And money was sitting on the sidelines, and people were not making commitments. And I think Trump is, his chaos and his lack of, I don't know what the right words are, just thinking through the impact of what he does. He's very transactional, as people describe it, I would say, because he lacks abstract thinking capability completely. He cannot plan long term and think about the impacts because he's so narcissistic. He's really looking at the benefit to him now in all of his decisions. And we just can't afford to have any politician, never mind the president of the United States, thinking so narrowly.
Well, let's hear from Guy Smith, because he's putting people in the right positions at the right companies at the right time, or at least that's always been the direction for recruiting firms. But guys, what is your direction this coming year, the opportunity, the challenge? But first, what's your big idea, guys?
Our biggest challenge that we're facing right now is that everybody thinks that because AI is here, that everything's so much easier to do, that you just plug it into a system and you go out there and do it. And AI is wonderful for gathering information, putting thought patterns together, putting in processes. But the thing that we have to do, which has always been in our business, whether you go back 20 years when Monster first started and they said, well, recruiting will go away, is that there's still the personal aspect of it all. And the problem with AI and everything else is that there's all these different things now interfering with people's time. So it's harder and harder to get someone's attention and to get them involved in a search. So that's the biggest kick right there for us right now. But at the same time, we're looking at so many things in AI itself right now to come in and streamline what we're doing in the process that we have. So we're in a transition period right now, although like Bob brought up a lot of things just now when he was talking about the election and everything else. It's definitely had an impact on what we're doing. It's slowed some things down as people are kind of sitting back and trying to take a little more definitive type look at what's going on.
So what's your big differentiator as opposed to another recruiting firm, guys?
Oh, okay. Good deal. One of the biggest things we do is that we get to know our clients first. If you don't understand what their goals, what their strategic plan is, where they're going, and where the pain is for what they're looking for in the person, you can throw resumes up all day long and it's never going to happen. We do a really good job in evaluating talent before we bring it in, based on all the knowledge that we get from the client itself, so that we come in with a short list of people for a client, we're pegging what they want. So what our tagline is that we help you make informed decisions. So what we do is provide all the information someone needs to make an informed decision, because we also tell our clients when they're looking at candidates that no is always an appropriate answer. Because if someone doesn't match, then let's don't even waste our time on it. We move to the next person because that person is going to be on the road to us.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rocky, that there'll always be a need for the personal service around recruiting. I have some complaints about, the industry as a whole, not the high end, but the keyword matching that they use to throw, resumes at hirers. It doesn't add value because it doesn't have any context. It'll be interesting to see if AI can improve that. But they've basically made applying so easy, and with such volume that, everyone does 1,000 applications because it's so easy. And that means the recruiters or the filterers of those resumes are just buried in an avalanche of resumes, but the qualification is not very good, which is why they need software now to rank resumes. But I doubt very much that software is any good. Haven't compared the inputs and the outputs, but it's a gestalt problem. It's not a keyword matching problem. And one of the bugaboos I have with the whole industry is the perception of the client is always that we have to have people from our industry. And I think that's one of the stupidest ideas in the world, because in the senior positions, you could pick up an industry in a week or a month and its differences. Yet it takes a decade to learn to be a good leader, manager, CEO, C-level executive. So you eliminate, 99.5% of the candidates by insisting they come from an industry. And, there are plenty of case studies and examples where, people are pulled from other industries. I mean, Lou Gershner of IBM came from packaged goods and was put in charge as CEO of the biggest technology company in the world, IBM at the time. I think they had 60 billion in revenues back when that happened in the early 90s. So, I think that both the clients and the industry have to acknowledge the fact that recruiting from within a single industry is a bad strategy.
I think you're right on target. I mean, I love my clients who have your point of view. You say the person doesn't need to be in healthcare that we're looking for. They don't have to be in manufacturing. What we're looking for are these key characteristics about somebody, as far as their background, decision-making skills, how they are with strategic planning, things of that nature are really on top. And the other thing that you mentioned a while ago about AI participating and looking at resumes, the problem now is people are having AI rewrite their resume, and it's preparing a resume that's almost false just to get them into the process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another challenge that we have. That's the reason our personal multi-interviews that we have with a candidate before we send them into a client is what kind of makes us stand out.
Yeah, and that's going to get worse. I was reading a week or two ago about someone who had set up an agent to put in 1,000 resumes overnight for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they got back plenty of inquiries, as will always happen when you're throwing a lot of mud against the wall. But it's hard to believe that was focused, so it will drown the recruiters even more in, as agents, apply 1,000 times overnight for people. It's going to get super crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to add in here, I'm involved in recruiting because I'm a board member of various companies, and I think, you said often will be wrong when employees or individuals are getting their CVs helped or rewritten by AI. I think it's not often. I think it's most of the time, because one of the things that I'm looking for when I'm reading the CV is the person's ability to express themselves and express themselves correctly. And if AI is doing it, well, can't rely on that anymore, because you have a perfect resume. Last January, we hired a finance director in an insurance company that I'm a chair of. and CV is just unbelievable. And that person has since been fired, and it's just because that, whatever they said in the CV sounded wonderful, but just did not live up to it in any way. But I see it plenty of places. And another thing I've seen recently, I think it's in one of the Jump Start, which is, I don't know, Rocky, if you're available with Jump Start, it's sort of like a for startups and so forth. But there's an application process that you can, to get into their system. And right on the application, it says, if AI has written this application, we will refuse it immediately. So it's, it's whether it's there, and it should almost be the same thing on recruiting sites, that if your CV has been written by AI, if we detect that, you're out of the running.
The fundamental problem with AI and its limits is it has no wisdom, it has no context of what's going on. The technical term for that is the tokens. When you're starting an AI session, it's only learning from that second forward about you, unless you've built a custom chat GPT. I've built a couple of those that bring your own context. But, most of what happens is outside of what you're going to tell it in your search. And, in the recruiting and the resume issue, there's a quality. I mean, if it's doing is, taking the best sentences and popping the right keywords in it, it's going to oversell that person's ability and, really be quite deceptive, not just in the writing style, but, in what it automatically sort of extends, or projects onto that person because they put a keyword in their resume or something.